Hello, it's great to be back at a codebar festival. I had a lot of positive feedback last time I was here when I talked about open source stuff. So I'm here again to talk more about open source stuff. So today I wanted to talk to you about open source mentorship program, what they are, how you can participate, and how they can impact your careers. And I want this talk to be an introduction into this topic and share my experience with such programs, and hopefully you'll be able to take away something and leverage such programs in your careers, especially if you are a student or a new developer. I will try to keep this short since it's a virtual talk, and I will leave you with resources to explore more about open source internships even further. So this is my experience. So this is my journey as a new programmer in January 2020 to working in open source full time in a span of an year. So this is how I did it, my experience through mentorship programs and how it enabled me to work in open source full time. So I started out, I actually quit my previous job and wanted to become a programmer. So it was January 2020. And by the time I learned some basic programming and started looking for jobs, COVID happened, and I couldn't get any job. So I gave myself a couple of months to try something new, and and through that process, I discovered open source communities, open source projects, and I got really involved. And within an year, I was able to uh, do this as a career. So initially, my experience with open source was to open source everything. So I had no job, so I was trying to build my resume. I was trying to make projects. So the only way to showcase your project with potential employers is to make it public, right? So open source was a way for me to make my code public, make my project public, uh, to make sure that my employer or my potential employer sees it and I can add it to my resume. So it is a completely straightforward way to approach these. So I ended up open sourcing everything I make. So every project I make, I started pushing it to GitHub. So if I was learning a new technology by building a project, let's say I'm learning Node.js, I'll probably make a sample application and I will push it on GitHub. And if I was building a weekend project, I had some crazy idea of a small project, I would be pushing it to GitHub. And even some random code that I wrote that probably isn't useful to anyone, uh, even me, I would push it to GitHub. So my GitHub account was filled with a lot of these random projects. And until a point in time, so I was hacking together a weekend project. I thought it was fun. It took me a couple of days to figure it out and fine tune that project. And what happened was this weekend project was trending on Hacker News. Someone posted it on Hacker News and it received a lot of traffic. I remember waking up one morning to find this project, my project receiving a lot of stars on GitHub. And when I went to check the source of this traffic, I found a post on Hacker News, which was on the front page. So it was really cool, and people seem to find the project useful. Uh, uh, I didn't think this project had a lot of potential. It was just a weekend project. I decided to make it open source, but this traffic or this uh, the way people reacted to the project, the way people found the project useful, I think it had a lot of impact, or uh, it 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 made a lot of impact on my experience with open source and how I approached open source. So currently it has 1.3K stars on GitHub and 20 plus contributors from around the world, which is pretty cool for a weekend project. So all this attention to the project made me work on it a bit more. I started spending more time making the project faster, improving the performance, talking to other contributors about like how we can do certain stuff better, and we were publishing new versions mm, frequently. We set up a website. We set up. We published the extension to. It was a browser extension, so we published it to Chrome Web Store and Firefox add-on store. So I was doing a lot of stuff now. So I think that made me an open source maintainer, I guess. So I didn't have any job, so I was doing open source stuff full time, working on this project full time. So it lasted about a couple of months, and I was working on this project full time. So I kind of thought of myself as an open source maintainer, but the problem was that this was quite unsustainable. That's because building a free and open source project does not give you any money generally. So your project is free, anyone can use it, and it's also open source. So uh, there is not really a way in which I can make money from it with this setup. Uh, and I also didn't have a job, so I was I was not working for at least 7 or 8 months. I almost blew away through my savings, and it was high time that I find a job. So, but I still wanted to work on open source stuff, but I also wanted to make money and like support myself. So one way I thought I could do this was through sponsorships. So this project has had a lot of users. So a couple of thousand users overnight meant like in terms of software as a service or SaaS products, that is a pretty good user number. So like even though this project was free, I was hoping that the people who were using this project might find it helpful and might decide to support the project. So I added an option to sponsor the project. So this is actually a screenshot from my Patreon, from the project's Patreon page. We had some overheads, but it was very minimal. And like within some time, we were able to make the project break even, and it is now it is also break even right now. But like the uh, so this amount, this $269 is all the money the project has made till date. So it has been almost 3 years, and we only managed to make $269, which makes the project break even. But you can't live with this money as your only source of income, right? So, and we didn't try to uh, get sponsorship aggressively. We just gave an option for people to do it, and like uh, we gave an option for people to do it, and left it at that. And I haven't withdrawn this amount yet. Uh, I don't know why, but like as I mentioned, the overhead costs were quite low. So at this point, I was looking for other ways where I can do software engineering, work on similar stuff, but also make money. So that is how I stumbled into mentorship programs. So I was a new developer, even though I had some experience in other areas. I haven't really worked as a software engineer before. So I found about open source mentorship programs as a way where I can get some mentorship, work on an open source project, and it could also help me uh, pay for myself and like support myself financially. So the first program I stumbled across was the Linux Foundation's mentorship program. So You can search it as LFX mentorship, and this will show up. So this is a program organized by the Linux Foundation, where the projects under the Linux Foundation offer mentorship. Uh, so as a mentee, you can apply to a particular project, and the project will select mentees based on your application and based on how you have been active in the community, how you have been contributing into the community. And then you can work on the project for in a part-time basis or on a full-time basis. And the foundation, the next foundation, and the sponsors, they will provide you with a stable stipend to support yourself through this program. So this was the first mentorship program I came across, and like the major thing that I got away from this is that there are a lot of open source projects. So in the Linux Foundation mentorship homepage, you will find a lot of projects listed. And what this meant was these projects were open source, and they were looking for people to come in and fix these projects, work on these new features. So it was like a search engine for me to look into more open source projects and more stuff to do. And working on open source projects also meant that I get to have a real world experience. Uh, I get to work on real world projects that are being used by a lot of people. So it gives me that sort of experience, that sort of exposure into projects without without having to get that experience from a full-time job. And so I applied to a couple of programs. I was uh, I applied to all these programs, and I was accepted into one of the projects. But this was the only project I was actively contributing to. I found this project, and uh, the community, the mentors who were taking part in this program, and I started contributing to this open source project. Even before this mentorship started, I was contributing to the project. Uh, I was I was making more and more contributions as time went by. And when I applied to the project through this program, they accepted because they knew that I was capable of contributing, and they knew I was there for I was supporting the project already. So to support me, they decided to offer me this mentorship, which meant that I can work on this project as a job. So I get to work on this project, and they will provide me with a stable stipend so that I don't have to worry about finding another job. And the LFX mentorship is not the only mentorship program out there. So the LFX mentorship is for the projects under the Linux Foundation, which includes other foundations like CNCF. But there are also other open source mentorship, open source internship programs out there. So I have curated a bunch of these programs, and you will be able to find it here. I'll just show it. So yeah, I just updated this post to 2023. So the dates are more or less correct for this year. And one of the popular programs is Google Summer of Code, which is organized by Google. So Google sponsors this program, and it helps it connects mentees and mentors from these open source projects, and they provide these mentees with a stable stipend based on where they are living. And anyone above the age of 18 can participate in this, and uh, this will give you an access to a mentor who will help you make your contributions while you are getting a stable stipend to work on open source stuff. So that is pretty cool. And we also have programs like the MLH Fellowship, which offers fellowships for students and new developers to work on open source projects. And there are also open source programs or open source mentorship or open source internship programs like Google Season of Docs, which is for technical writers and not developers. So even if you are not a software developer, if you are a technical writer, you can also take part in these programs. And there are also other programs like Outreachy, which uh, with the goal to empower more underrepresented communities to work on open source projects, uh, to make a career in open source projects and to contribute to open source. So all these internship programs are great. I'll leave you with these resources so that you can check them out later. All of these programs, I also have written extensively about how you can actually apply to these programs and how you can get selected, and you can check that out after this talk. But just to give you an introduction, there are a lot of such programs, and they are happening throughout the year. And this table summarizes pretty much all of these programs, and you can check those out. But the point is, there are a lot of these programs, and more or less all of them have the goal to help newcomers in open source make contributions and help the open source projects grow sustainably. So yeah, so I got selected as a mentee in the program, and getting selected was the easy part, I guess. Then you had to really improve yourself. You're working on open source stuff, so that means whole code is your whole work is public and everyone can see it. This meant that there is an additional pressure on you to do things better. And you're also working with really remote teams. Maybe you are in China, uh, and your teammate or your mentor is in the US. So you are uh, on working from different ends of the world. So it might be difficult. So there are a lot of other factors that come into play when we work within open source projects. Uh, but but they also help you, like these programs also help you to level up. So if you are not part of such programs, you might find it uh, difficult. But these programs give you a specific path that you can follow to ensure that you regain skills while you are part of the program. So after some time, I was talking about our projects at conferences. So this is a screenshot from uh, KubeCon a couple of years ago. It was a virtual KubeCon, so we gave a talk about our work. We gave a talk about the projects we are working on with the audience at KubeCon. So this was pretty cool. So I was able to showcase all the work I have been doing. I was able to take ownership of a lot of projects I have been doing, and this was really fun. And this is a screenshot from Codebar Festival 2022, where I talked about open source stuff. And this was the reason I'm back here again to talk more about open source stuff. I received a lot of good feedback from the attendees last year, and they found the talk helpful. So I wanted to make another talk to hopefully help a lot of you to get into open source and use it to uh, impact your careers. Uh, yeah. So. Uh, Yeah, so this is not quite trivial. So like open source mentorships are not quite trivial. They are very dissimilar to traditional internships. So to give you an idea about what these programs are and to introduce you to such possibilities was my goal. So yeah, and like throughout this program, I was able to improve how I contribute. So I was writing a lot of code. And as the program progressed, I was able to make more contributions. Uh, and like maybe without this program, I would have never discovered this project, and maybe I wouldn't have been able to work on it full time and like really develop my skills. So this program really uh, helped me by giving me a path to follow and like ensuring that I was also able to support myself financially and like commit to this open source project full time. And this is a weird way to showcase my open source contribution. So I decided to uh, 3D print it out. So 2021 was probably the year where I started working on open source actively full time. So I decided to make a memory out of it, and this is a 3D printed version of my GitHub contributions. So that is how I went from a new programmer in January 2020 to full-time open source by a year, and it was through these open source internship programs. And as the saying goes, like you have to pay it forward. So the first thing I did uh, after working on open source projects and after being promoted to an open source maintainer and being a real leader in the project or owner of the project, uh, I tried to pay it back by becoming a mentor myself. So I was a mentor for two of these programs. So I was able to guide mentees, guide newcomers uh, on how they can work on this particular project. So I was in wearing a different shoe. So like I knew what the mentees wanted because I was a mentee myself, and I think I was able to help them through the program and like also help them to follow the path that I followed before to enable them to work more on open source stuff. And I was also a mentor for the Google Summer of Code program, uh, which I which I think went really well. And I think I was able as a mentor, I was able to help a lot of mentees start contributing to open source and sustain their contributions. I also do this right now to some capacity. So I try to teach others or try to educate others with based on my experience as an open source contributor, like in this talk. So I'm trying to help more people be aware of such programs, such opportunities, so that you can also leverage them as I was able to do. Yeah, so uh, this is my this is the program. This is the project I was a mentor of at Google Summer of Code. So finally, I wanted to ask you, like, or maybe you like leave this open-ended, whether you should contribute to open source. So I talked about these mentorship programs. I talked about contributing to open source, but the what it all boils down is, should you really contribute to open source? And the answer I would say is definitely yes. But make sure you're contributing for the right reasons. So you shouldn't contribute to open source just because everyone else is doing it, because a lot of people are doing open source contributions as an alternative to traditional internships and doing programming challenges on lead code, right? So make sure you're contributing for the right reasons. Open source projects are always more about the community than the code. So if you are only being part of the community just to leverage it leverage it for your career, then that might not be the best interest of the community. So when you are contributing to open source projects, make sure that you are involved and make sure that you are following the project's vision. Make sure that uh, make sure that you don't forget about the important part, the actual open source projects, while you are while you are also trying to uh, use it as a leverage in your career, right? So make sure you're contributing for the right reasons. It is definitely okay to like want money, or like it's definitely okay to look for sustainable solutions while working in open source, because a lot of open source maintainers are unable to support themselves financially, because they are because the companies that use their open source projects either don't pay these open source maintainers because the project is free and open source, or the financial system or the money making system they are set up around their open source projects are not actually making money. So it is perfectly okay to want to uh, want to make sure that your open source contributions are sustainable. So that means uh, supporting yourself through such programs where you'll find a sustainable income, such a sustainable stipend while you are working in open source. So this can also be pretty essential for a lot of us. uh, yeah, so, and a lot of people can't afford unpaid internships. So working in open source and also getting paid money to do it is actually enabling a lot more people to be actively part of such opportunities. And when you contribute to open source, uh, it also means that uh, like such programs also expect you to keep contributing to the open source project after your tenure, after your mentorship tenure. So remember all of that. I have written more about these in my blogs, and you will also be able to find these uh, in each of these open source internship programs pages. So you can definitely check that out after this talk. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me at on Twitter. I'll try to respond to all DMs, but a better way to reach out to me will be through my email. You can reach out to me at navendu@apache.org. And to learn more about these programs and how you can take part in these programs, I'll urge you to check out this article I wrote on the topic. So navendu.me/open source internship with hyphens. You can check these out. Uh, check this out and learn more about these specific open source programs, and like reach out to me if you have any queries. And yeah, with that, I conclude my talk. I really wish I could have been there in person to interact with you and uh, start a discussion around this, but I think we have to do it virtually today. So thank you, and I'll hope to see you sometime in the future. Thanks.